We're now recording, and I will pass the baton to Joe and let him take off showing us what he and Peter have put together. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, hold on. So, Joe, you should soon have the wand, and we should hopefully be able to see your screen. One other housekeeping detail, please. Please mute your phones if you're not the presenter so that we don't get everyone's background noise. Okay, Joe, have at it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so maybe I'll just. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think it's readable. And maybe what I will probably I'll give a brief introduction, just explain the concept, what Joe and I agreed. And then Joe, you might just show examples and walk people through the actual content, okay?
Sure.
Okay, so basically, Joe and I, we slightly changed the name, but it's still a very broad topic, integrated travel demand and network models. But we felt like it's important to make a distinction that we're not talking about some other types of integrated models, which might include, land use, economic development, and many other things. So this is literally about travel demand and networks. But another thing about this part, again, practically any aspect of travel demand model or network model is actually relevant here because we have to integrate them. But we try to avoid those duplications because both travel demand and network models are actually covered by many other topics. So this topic is focused on this specific issue of integration, and we will add eventually multiple linkages to the other topics as they emerge in order to avoid duplication, because again, this topic is not a separate issue. It's not an isolated thing. It's actually a combination of things that belong to some other topics, as we all understand. So we felt that we need a structure. So as Joe showed here, there is currently like a 3-digit deep level structure in order to classify the material, and we probably will add even more, and we discuss some additional, so it's going to grow. Just a first starting point, which mostly just to share with you the structure rather than the actual content. So the idea was, again, we will create this kind of a tree of topics, which is very logical and should help people navigate and find what exactly they need. So it's not a linear structure where you just jump from topic to topic and they're all equally important. Here is a certain hierarchy. We feel it should be done this way. And so it's currently, again, the 3-digit deep. It might be even more eventually. For each topic, the idea was as follows. When you click on one of those, it gives you, again, like in this particular case, it gives you a short, basically, to the extent possible, short overview that says, okay, what you actually can expect. And eventually, we will add multiple linkages to different documents, reports, web links, whatever we basically relevant, which this person, and also PDFs if it's publicly available. Some of them we already have, and currently in this setting we just provided references, but eventually it would be actual link to the PDF or website or published, whatever, to help people really find the source. But again, we try to avoid very big descriptions, putting something like 5 pages on the website, because people don't really read big texts from the website. A useful website, as we all know, when we use them for some other purposes, is a navigation tool with a brief description what it is, and then it would provide a PDF or something. That's the best way, we believe, to organize all this. Also, the last detail, it's currently maybe biased towards what Joe and I know and projects that we have participated. So so definitely what we expect that people who would visit all this And very soon, with some adjustments, actually, would like to open it and let other people see it and provide, you know, comments and additions. I expect actually it would be a barrage of you know, responses that will, and it's very good actually. We will respond and it will grow. It's currently we populated it with what we know, and both Joe and I just happened for the last several years we have been involved in many relevant projects. So we put a lot of stuff just from our projects that we participated in, papers that we wrote. But it doesn't have to be this way eventually, and it would be open to. And actually, I would like to create a kind of not necessarily a single guide, but in many cases, I believe it's appropriate to provide, for example, several alternative options. You can find in those descriptions that we already put here in many places. What we wrote is basically there are several approaches. Okay, we're not trying to say what is right, what is wrong, but we're trying to describe what we believe, you know, deserves attention. So it might be multiple approaches, and we're not trying to nail it down and judge which one is necessarily right. But those, at least, that we select should have some merits. So anything that we report here should make sense, but not necessarily a single approach. There are several places where already place it. So it's very open in this regard because the topic itself is very dynamic, as you know. A lot of developments, especially when it comes to integrated activity-based models and DTA, is actually it's a very hot topic, and there are only several research projects, some of them ongoing, some of them just recently were delivered. So it's very open, it's very dynamic, very much moving targets. So this website maybe in a year would look differently, and I hope it would look differently with maybe some additional things that we don't know at the moment. But we'll try to create this foundation. And even with this approach, when we just outline those mass topic and try to create a paragraph or two on each one, it's actually ended up in a pretty big text. It's already like maybe 10 to 20 pages even at this level. So it could be extended. For many things, I kind of hesitated, should we really add even more, like 2 or 3 pages? It's not a problem. We have this material. But again, I believe that it's not a useful website when you click on something and it gives you 3 pages to read. It's not the right structure. The right structure is to see a paragraph that explains the essence with subsequent linkages and, you know, subtopics. So it's kind of like a navigation tool which never gives you a big text right away to swallow. So that's how it's organized at the moment. And the idea was to cover a wide range of possible demand models and network models, and to give both the theoretical part and the practical recommendations for integration. And at this moment, Joe, I maybe would suggest you to go over the main things and maybe add your comments as well. And especially I'm thinking would like to go over those 4 major like quadrants that we have identified, but also to show people a little bit of the structure and actual content of each subtask.
Sure. Yeah. So, the intent, Peter and I iterated on, what the content of this page could be, and I kind of agree with everything Peter just described. Well, I think one thing that you'll see as we go through it is that there are opportunities for us to perhaps, break off pages if necessary, so that, even as Peter described a moment ago, even limiting the discussion of all of these topics leads to a pretty lengthy initial front page for this topic, and I expect that this is something that's going to be revised. But basically, it's structured around providing a big picture overview of what we're talking about when we talk about integrated travel demand and network models, some of the kind of key concepts in terms of the contents, the components of the models, both in terms of the different flavors, both in terms of the travel demand components, as well as the network supply model components. An interesting, somewhat more theoretical, but highly relevant topic is this question of the choice context for different travel dimensions. and that might have to do with things like selection of modes or submodes, or topics like scheduling, as well as issues such as convergence and equilibrium. And this is all, again, there's so much that could be said about this. We really did, Peter in particular, who authored, I think, really strove to kind of keep the discussion succinct, while also giving some kind of meaningful illustrations of what we're talking about. I think a real core, as Peter just described, of this, and probably the piece that's going to be, or the pieces that are going to be most interesting to folks, kind of start here, where there's a description of these kind of practical schemas. And I don't know, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, just like one additional detail, which you can see. We tried to the extent possible for each particular, link for each particular sub-item to have a short description and, if relevant, for many of them actually, to have kind of a good visual, simple visual explanation of the main idea. So literally it should make it simple for anyone to navigate, because what you immediately see when you click is just like a paragraph or two, not difficult to read and understand, and kind of a relevant graphic which is like very visual and explains. We try to do this, but doesn't necessarily have to be this way. But I think like a website full of text is a little bit boring, so we try to add some graphics as well. And yeah, Joe, and maybe like we're technical people here on the call. Maybe Joe, we could walk through the actual context of this particular item just to show you how exactly it's useful. And you can see here, basically the main technical part is classified by basically 4 major integration schemas, whatever. We're still working on some maybe terminology, but at the moment that's what we use. And this is very clear, because one of the important things is to really have a very clear logic. That's what helps people understand. At the moment you lose logic and everything becomes linear, just a linear set of pieces of information, that's always a problem, at least for technical people. So here you can see it's organized in a very simple way. We have literally, if we don't go into details, we have 2 types of demand models today on the market. 4-step, tree-based, and tour-based, activity-based. And at the moment, doesn't matter a lot of details and variation within each class, but there are 2 major classes. The same can be said about network models. Literally, the major options is a conventional static user equilibrium or some sort of a dynamic traffic assignment. And later on, we'll also talk about transit as well. But at the moment, just to make it simple, formulated in terms of highway assignment procedures. So it naturally creates 2 by 2, naturally creates 4 different integrated models. And actually all 4 of them are feasible, and all 4 of them exist. And of course, the first quadrant is the most frequent one at the moment. But we have examples for other 3 quadrants, including even the quadrant number 4, which is the most advanced way of integrating activity-based models and dynamic traffic assignment, which includes the C10 projects and some other projects that we mentioned here as well. So we have good examples for all 4. And you can see for them the structure immediately at this point, the reader has to make a choice which way to go. And for example, a person who is interested, who is a 4-step modeler at the moment and just interested in a better way to integrate his model with network assignment can go exactly to this. But somebody who is interested in very advanced ABM DT integration has go to the quadrant number 4. And you can easily choose it, and then subsequently you can go deeper and deeper into details. That's kind of like an example of how we organized all this. And okay, Joe, do you want to add something else?
No, I think that's great. I mean, I think this is kind of the main structure around which I think people, and I think we and others have been kind of thinking about this topic. So this really is, I think, the kind of core the page at this point. And there's a bunch of stubs here, and that's largely my fault because I wasn't able to fold in my material quickly. I think the other main section that needs to be fleshed out here, and again, I apologize for these stubs at the present, we'll have them updated in a day or so, are these kind of design considerations. So in addition to both what tools you're choosing to integrate and what types of tools, what are the considerations that you need to think about, whether that's, the type of information that's being exchanged in both directions, and the kind of spatial or temporal or typological kind of resolution or units with which you're using, which are very kind of practical concerns also, and that can cause complications if they're not kind of thought out comprehensively. And so, again, I think another thing that we're simply going to strive to do, echoing one of Peter's earlier comments, is to keep it visually interesting by inserting, kind of illustrative graphics, because I do think that will help break up the kind of the monotony of the text, and between that and trying to keep some of the discussion short, that helps the reader engage.
Yeah, there are, you can see a lot of placeholders, because even with the pace that we have adopted, that's still actually a pretty big document, a lot of writing. We will slowly populate it more and more, and I believe that when we invite other people to see it, they will provide maybe, and so it's going to grow. And there are some placeholders, and even we talked about, I don't know, Joe, if it's included or not, the very last set, we talked about maybe even future directions. I don't see it right now. I probably
I didn't throw that text in there. I'll get that.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just a placeholder, but there will be more. So we thought, like, again, this is a practical. Primarily, we want to show technical things that have been already implemented. But I think it would be good even to have, since this topic is very advanced in itself, to have kind of a future avenues, a little bit of a room, even for discussion about future directions, because this topic is really very much a moving target. So it's good to have even, people respond and maybe have some discussion about future directions and how they see it beyond what has been already implemented. Anyway, there's a lot of yet placeholders that's going to grow, but we do have, I believe, a healthy structure that, okay, guys, at this moment, probably we would like to hear from you what you think, and if you have some questions or suggestions.
Thank you. This is Julie. Just one quick kind of just getting my bearings question, but is this all on one scrolling piece? As you were showing us things, it's all in one page?
Yeah, at present it's all one page, which, I guess in putting this together, I think it struck us that this is a lot of material for one page, and I think our intent was with this first draft to kind of populate it out and see, kind of how it naturally falls out in terms of the amount of content in total, before engaging in trying to kind of split off, child pages.
Right. Okay, well, because that would be my first suggestion, is that it needs to be split into a family instead of one single parent, if you will. So as you get to that, I understand what you're doing. That's totally fine, but don't lose sight of that, because I think that's important. And also, I noticed at the bottom, I didn't see any references, but I know throughout you probably quoted lots of references. So if you could just be sure you include those as well once you're to that stage of developing things, because that's important for us to have as well. And it would be great if the references can be resource pages so people can go to them and find them themselves, as opposed to just a static list of a report.
And Julia also have a question. Sorry, probably we discussed it before, but what if we want to provide PDF linkages? What is the policy in this regard? Should we kind of?
You mean linking to another site? Linking it to another?
No, to a PDF document.
Oh, if it's a PDF document that you have authority to share, so it's not, there's not a copyright issue with it. We have the ability, although I was trying to help somebody with it this morning and we struggled a little, so I need to verify this, but I believe we can post PDF documents to our website and so it's a resource page that has the PDF that's actually there as opposed to taking someone to a link to another site. But the copyright portion of that is important. It needs to be something, obviously, that you
The problem, again, where it stands now, for example, I do have hundreds of very useful PDFs, which would be useful to populate. And it's much better than linkages. Some of them were just download from links, but those links constantly fluctuate and might not be relevant anymore. So actually having a real PDF is much more convenient. Question like, I don't know about copyright. How can we really,
Well,
I don't know.
Copyright is going to be a chunk of discussion at our meeting in January because we have some initial guidelines through the Creative Commons process, but we need to address it in a little more detail. So for now, I would not post them if there are things you're not sure about. So if it's not something that is public domain and it's okay for you to put out there until we meet in January and we tighten up that policy a little bit. So keep track of them, but don't put them out there just yet until we have a chance to finalize how we're going to proceed with making sure we're not violating any copyright issues.
Okay.
So are there other comments? It's been their time's about up for this first presentation, but anybody have any other questions or comments for Joe and Peter? Okay. Well, thank you. You guys have done a lot of work. I do love seeing how all of a sudden these pages become, voila, they become reality. So I love that everybody's really spending time out there and we appreciate it. And, if you have questions offline, by all means, let me know. We'll track down solutions to things that you're running into. So next presenter is Birat, and I think, Joe, you can just hand it. You handed it back to me. Okay, good. I'll hand it.
Yeah, I think you could even hand it directly to each answer. But
I think he could. I don't. Is it coming back to me?
Go to meeting gives you you can go. It's okay.
I don't have it. What do you guys see? Just the. Oh, here it is.
No, Julie, if you are the host, you can do it just yourself. You can deprive Joe of any and give it to Birat.
Okay, so I think Birat handed it to you.
And just Birat has to accept it, and we will see his screen immediately.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What about my screen?
Not seeing it yet, but now I am. There we are.
I see your screen, yeah.
Okay, so it's all good, right?
It's all good. Great. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. Okay. I have a few things to report on the topic network assignment, which I think is good because I believe there are a couple of folks behind me wanting to present. So I'll go ahead and report my progress. Starting with the new content, I have added a few topics page that are related to network assignment that I thought are important to understand before diving into details. Among the topics, one is solution algorithm. It's empty right now. There is no content, but I have a commitment from Hillel Bargera from Ben Gurion University of Negev, Israel. Many of you are already probably know him already, and he's pretty active in network modeling committees. So hopefully before TRB, we'll have some content on this topic. I think just related to that, recruiting volunteers to write a page is very difficult. that I just want to say that, and network assignment is a big topic. There are a lot of paper and that gets submitted to the network modeling committee. I believe it's around 200 somewhere. So it's a lot of paper to review and keep track of it. So I definitely need that help. I'm asking for help basically. That's one thing that I want to get out first. And I also have updated a few links within the within this wiki website. And sometimes it just takes some time to rephrase the sentence that's already out there to link it to the new pages. I've done that, trip generation, this one, and then I believe something that Alan put together or Sam put together. So I have updated some links, and other than that, I have also added a page on network equilibrium, users equilibrium. It's very basic right now, just basic information that I thought is important for practitioner to understand from implementation point of view how it works. And again, the content is tailored towards beginner practitioner or what I call my colleagues in policy department who wants to understand how things work. A typical example that we normally get is how do we estimate traffic on roadway? And a common, very short and somewhat technical answer is, we say through model, which assumes user equilibrium assumption. So I thought this page would help folks like those to understand how actually it works in the context of implementation. So that I have done, and we definitely can add more content related to it, but that's where I'm at on this page. And I also believe anybody who is interested in knowing more theoretical aspect of it and should join classes or be read more papers or curious enough to find some papers on TRR. So that's about the content. In terms of page design, I've tried to stick with what David Schmidt has mentioned last time. Stay within the 3-scroll. That's my goal, and still trying to learn the editing features of MediaWiki tool. It's interesting and not frustrating yet. So that's my reporting. And another thing that I'm planning to do, or another topic that's on my list next, is the stochastic assignment. Again, there's nothing right now, but this is a topic that I have not been very intimate in terms of implementation. So I'm going to be gathering reports, papers, and maybe some of you may have some insight on who to contact or what paper to look for. So that's one thing that's on my list. That's pretty much about what's my plan in terms of content. But I also want to talk about I also want to follow up on Alan's comment on the content that it is here at this point, and I agree with Alan that right now there is a lot of things missing right now. Certainly, transit assignment, bike assignment, walk assignment, or pedestrian assignment are missing, and I'm putting them in back burner. And my focus right now is just to bring up topics that are more common in practice, and then I really cross my finger that someone be really itchy enough to write something that this is missing from this page. So that's my hope. But at the same time, we need to start somewhere, and so that's where I'm at. And Alan actually generously said, I believe his content is 10% coverage. I was giving 2% coverage myself. So that's my, and lastly, on the topic of having multiple pages with same topic, same title. My personal opinion is, there can be multiple pages with exact same title, but up to a certain time. Maybe annual review would be a good time point where these things get looked at and merged or evolved, or rename one of those pages, something like that fashion. That's to follow up on what came up on last meeting. Also related to the content development is in our meeting in September in Chicago, there was a discussion of reaching out to TRB committee for volunteer recruitments. I don't know if any of you have been successful to get on the agenda. I'm not so sure how I do it. Actually, Kim actually tried to hook up us, sending an email to the network modeling committee, and it's a big committee. There are multiple subcommittees. And Michelle actually followed up on that email and was kind enough to include me in her email. And last I checked with her, she hasn't gotten any response back. And I did not try to make another separate attempt to making a similar request. So my feeling on that is, there are several topics just on network assignment, or there are several topics that are related to network modeling committee, transportation network assignment, dynamic network models. So maybe we should assign one person to contact and talk about all the topics circle related to the network modeling, and have discussed there rather than multiple people contacting same committee. So that's my suggestion. Another thing I also want to thank to Kermit is he has added a page related to network assignment, which is very relevant. It has to do with how do you post-process the estimated volume, or the issue of having higher volume capacity. I'm getting some help, and I'm thankful for that. I think Alan also mentioned something that he would try to edit the page to make it more comprehensive. So that's where I'm at this point, and it's moving slowly, not as fast as I would like, because I don't have a whole lot of resources and not a pre-cooked material sitting on my desk to slap on it. So that's where I'm at, and that's all I have to report for now. And if any questions or suggestions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Birat. First of all, if you're not speaking, would you please mute your phone? We're getting a lot of background noise from someone out there, and I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Not you. You were the speaker, so you can leave yours on. It's somebody else was out there making noise.
Okay.
I think you've done a great job. I think the whole point of this is to start a structure. So the fact that it's not all the way populated isn't a problem at all, because you're right. We're hoping there are others out there who will come and add. Ram is supposed to be getting organized with the committees at TRB and our various topic circles. And since he's the section head, he might have a little in at getting us some time on some of those agendas. So I will follow up with him that you've had a little trouble getting connected there, and we'll try to get that organized from his end and see if maybe we can make some progress, so that that is a great place to go and try to recruit some people to assist, along with just looking at the papers that end up on the TRB presentation agenda. And when you see one that might be relevant, you can track down the author and say, hey, why don't you put your information out here and send them to the link. So It will all happen, and it's just it takes a little patience. I appreciate what you've done. Are there any other questions or suggestions for Birat at this point? Okay.
This is Alan.
Just
something really quick, since you know, there's an incredible amount of literature out there on the subject, and I think one of the big challenges is going to be to do a little bit of sifting and winnowing and trying to figure out what is most relevant to our community. So that's going to take a lot of thinking and a lot of organizing and a very careful selection of the people to contribute. So this is really challenging, and I'm pleased that Birat is going to take this time.
Yes, I agree. You're right. An interesting problem would be that we had so many people here wanting to put things in that we had to actually be discriminating, but there is a lot of information, so we'll have to keep tabs on that.
Right, and hopefully I think we should let people add stuff if they want to, and eventually it will emerge, you know, at one point or other. At this point, we're just struggling with what we want to put in there.
Right.
So that's my view.
And I think if you remember, we talked about in September that at probably the Innovations in Travel Modeling Conference coming up in April in Baltimore, we'll have another work session of our committee where we will do that sort of house cleaning thing. And that's the time that not only we might deal with stub pages that no one's ever populated, deal with pages with the same name, and then also deal with potential content that we think isn't quite appropriately placed on the site. So we're hopefully going to have a process in place to at least annually revisit all of that.
Great.
Okay, so next presenter is Eric Pihl. Eric, are you ready to roll?
I am. Yeah,
okay.
I'm going to hand the wheel to me here.
It is coming your way. And hopefully you should have it here.
Okay.
Yep, there you are.
All right. Well, I think my page looks dramatically different than the version that I shared at our in-person meeting, which hopefully is good news. I wanted to just sort of first note some of the challenges with this topic, and I know we all face our own difficulties and challenges with respect to our particular pages, but the challenge that I noted on this pricing topic is that there's been a lot of sort of advancements in research and model applications over the last 3 to 5 years, and so I felt compelled to try to share some of those, the findings from research and some of the more interesting applications of activity models and dynamic traffic assignment and integrated models. So I'm happy that the participants on today's calls are also leading efforts to develop pages on integrated models. And so the ability to kind of thread my page with those developments, I think, has been enabled me to avoid, I guess, the proliferation of too much content. And so that was really the challenge that I felt I was sort of dealing with. Sort of how much content do I want to show here, and how much of the more sort of technically involved discussions with respect to properties of dynamic traffic assignment, activity model structures do I want to sort of handle, or have most of that level of detail covered on those respective pages. So what I tried to do is kind of capture content that is most relevant for pricing, and so to sort of acknowledge the strengths and weaknesses of different methods, and then have sort of enough threading in here that enables someone to go out to learn more about what an activity model is, and its sort of the underlying principles and theories behind these models. So with that in mind, I'll just sort of kind of do a quick walkthrough of my page. I thought it was a good idea to kind of start out with just some general hypotheses about behavioral responses to pricing. And so rather than just jumping into a discussion of methods, I thought it's good to inform the viewer of sort of what these general hypotheses are. And so I went out and found a couple of, I think, pretty useful references. Todd Littman developed a report on pricing that had a lot of fairly good compilation of different sort of revealed preference survey data, as well as some evidence or some conclusions from the SHARP2 CO4 project. So I sort of bundled those together to kind of lay a foundation for talking about sort of what we need out of our modeling tools. So what do we need them to be able to respond to? And so I sort of start the page and kind of describing some of those general relationships. And then as I thought about, the elements of pricing, when we had our meeting, we kind of had briefly touched on kind of the challenge in terms of talking about costs, auto operating costs, for example. Sort of how do we, would those be encompassed within a pricing page? And so, there are some missing pieces here. For instance, I have a placeholder for cost, but I guess I'm still sort of struggling to get at least with the idea of presenting, fuel costs as a price, and I believe that it should be incorporated here. I haven't really filled in some of those gaps yet. But my focus really was on some of what, some of the findings from sort of research reports, from practitioners' guides that mostly relates to sort of the congestion and road pricing work. So CO4 is very, very strong in that area. In terms of parking pricing, I wanted to lay out some of the observed behavioral responses to pricing strategies. So this is really the kind of setting the foundation for some of what we hope to measure with our model. So I sort of walked folks through kind of the various kind of pricing types of applications. And then the next section really gets into, well, how do we integrate pricing in our travel models? And so this next slide will look familiar to Peter and Joe, since they were large, significant contributors to the CO4 project, and I think this showed up in the NHRP 857 report as well on traveler response to, or how to adopt analysis methods for pricing. And so this begins to lay out the dimensions of travel behavior that, that seem to be most relevant for pricing. So what I'm trying to do is sort of establish those behaviors by their temporal characteristics. So I think this is a really good starting point because it's sort of an acknowledgement that not all the behavior is long-term. So there are short-term responses to pricing that we need our analytical tools to be able to sort of be capable of evaluating. And so we're kind of acknowledging those inherent complexities, and then the idea that there's both sort of demand and supply side characteristics that we need to account for. And so we're moving from a more aggregate foundation of sort of these mathematical equations and moving down into more detailed sort of operational level analysis. So the level of detail sort of increases as we start expectations for more kind of rigorous information about path choices that are maybe time dependent, that acknowledge kind of more the operational characteristics of the system. Those are requiring sort of higher levels of granularity. So that kind of leads into kind of the differentiation of analysis tools. And so this is where I sort of struggled to get at the sort of right level of detail, but as I noted maybe when I sort of began my talk here, that what I'd like to do is rely as much on some of the other pages as I can. And so there's some threading here with for instance, with the trip-based models. I found there was a nice page already developed on that topic. But I've assembled a paragraph that sort of highlights sort of good practices in trip-based modeling highway pricing applications. I've done the same for activity models, static assignment, and dynamic traffic assignment. And so once again, these are all threaded with a number of other pages that have been developed on those topics. And I added, I wanted to highlight just the significance of value of time, because we know that value of time is in its poor treatment in models, or omission in models sometimes is highly correlated with forecast errors. So I'm trying to sort of identify that and to highlight its relative importance. And so what I'd like to do is, in the next step, is to create a page on value of time, because I noticed that we really don't have kind of that standalone discussion, and it seems to fit into a number of other topics. So that's sort of the next on my list of things to do. And I have a placeholder under methods for parking pricing, although there's some fairly good examples from the work that San Francisco has done and in other places ranging from simple to advanced methods. I just need to sort of populate that, but right now it's still in a placeholder format. And then the next step is sort of move through those families of models and then talk sort of briefly about some of the advanced modeling practices. So this fits in with Peter's page, which I have an internal reference to that. So the integration of activity models with DTA, which is obviously very relevant to pricing. So the equilibration of demand and supply is really, I think, consistent with what we're trying to accomplish, and fits in nicely with the choices that table of transportation choices and behavior that I've already gone over. And then I wanted a standalone reference to the Sharp 2C10 work, and so I have a link to some of the communications portal for that project, so the users can go there to download data. And the next section tries to bring in some of the findings from research, and the CO4 project seems to provide just a wealth of insight, and I didn't find really any that level of depth in many other places. So what I did was extracted the top 10 or 11 different kind of areas that were identified in that study, and just picked out a few that from looking through other documents seem to be the most sort of highly correlated with errors or forecast accuracy. And so I wanted to introduce that concept of the need to have reliable information from a model, so I have a link under forecast accuracy to NCHRP 364, which kind of goes into these topics, or at least acknowledges the need to be able to account for them in better detail. So I talk a little bit about value, reliability, income, and willingness to pay. And so I have links to some of the CO4 recommendations. So this is relying on that report to sort of convey some of best practices for applying models in a pricing evaluation setting. So I had this, I like this graphic for kind of demonstrating that the value of time variability, and this is these examples for a total of $20, but all of this is linked once again to and intertwined with findings from CO4. And I sort of wrap up the page with what I think is fairly useful focus on applications. So since pricing is a little bit unique, I'm actually kind of addressing what amounts to a transportation alternative. And so where a number of the other pages are referring to specific components of travel models, I felt that there needed to be some treatment of good examples, some illustrations of what other agencies are doing. So two examples I thought kind of relate to the material that I presented, the San Francisco activity model. So they've used that fairly aggressively in looking at coordinate pricing alternatives. So I sort of describe that effort and link back to actually to the activity model page, as well as the SFCTA page that describes kind of the structure of their activity models. Then here in Denver, we helped on a dynamic traffic assignment model application. So sort of focusing on the ABM and DTA models as illustrations of good modeling practice, I think could eventually be of interest to the here. And then I have some references down at the bottom, but obviously I think there are a few more than I may have missed upstream in the page. So that's where I'm at now, and I think as this page evolves, there will be opportunities to link to some of the other pages probably better than I've been able to do so far. But there are a lot of linkages here that I just want to make sure that I capture. And without, once again, I don't want this to have a lot of unnecessary or extraneous information, but to give users enough, or the viewers enough understanding that they can sort of branch out for more details on these different methods. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions, ideas, thoughts.
Just a side note, this is Julie. I'm not really sure why, but your page is arranged a little differently than the others, like the category list that's at the bottom there, where it says, other categories that it's connected to, incubator topics and pricing. Usually that's all on the right-hand side. So I'll look into it. I don't know what happened. It might be some little, formatting, something that got accidentally changed. But so if it's changing, if it changes on you, we won't change your content. We just might change it back so it looks like the others. I'm not really sure why that happens, but it happens. So I really like your application section. I think that's a great idea to include those. I think that will help people, because you made a good point that we're really talking about an optional alternative, and I think that's really good. You've made great progress too. Everybody's done a great job. Any questions for Eric or comments or?
Eric, it's Peter Vosha. I maybe overlooked it. I thought that, do you have a section describing like types of pricing? Because there are many of them, like area pricing, congestion pricing, variable dynamic pricing. This is there is a useful section. Just you have a lot of stuff from CO4 anyway. But I thought like, because
Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, why I'm saying that, because I'm not sure it's right way, but for many practitioners, kind of like a portal is not the modeling discussion, but the type of pricing project they have in hand. If it's a managed lane or something. And I don't see how, for example, if I'm interested in HOV, a hot lane, how would I enter this? I'm a practitioner. I don't know which tool to use here. I just want to see, to learn more about tools for hot lanes, for example. That's my starting point, my project. So how would I enter this page?
Yeah, I know it's a good point. I thought the way that the 857 report seemed to kind of get at the structure of that a little bit. Talking about just the types, the variation in tools depending on the analytical needs, and I had that some of that in here before, and I removed. I think that there's the potential to incorporate more of that, methods that are useful for different types of pricing, and I agree that the viewer should be able to go in here and.
Actually, the NCHRP 857. There's another project that I happen to manage actually. That was structured exactly this way. Basically, it was structured by pricing types and then correspondingly what kind of model features you have to pay attention to. Might be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. So
CO4 is a little bit like more advanced in terms of actual model structure. So, but this NCHRP was literally written for practitioners primarily. Starting point was the type of the project, not the type of the model.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's just like because that's why it's a little bit like what you show is maybe would be more for modelers than for a wider audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good recommendation, and I'm going to take a look at that report and see if I can make this also,
Yeah, it's not. It's on top. What you showed, it's all relevant. You don't have to restructure, but maybe if you talk about congestion road, somewhere it should be a categorization of pricing projects or studies with some subsequent linkage to there is something of the sort. I just know that most of the people, that's what they would like to see. Okay.
Great idea. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Any other comments? Thank you again, Eric. So I think our last presenter is Chuck, otherwise known as Pablo today. So Pablo, are you ready for the screen?
Muchas gracias. Yeah. Got going.
Okay, here it comes.
Oh, my screen. Close confidential windows.
Yeah.
Okay, there it is. Everyone sees it?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So I've worked a little bit since Chicago on the air quality modeling section, and basically my principle is that air quality modeling is you can use any kind of travel demand model, and the better your travel model is, the better your air quality modeling is going to be. So I'm hoping to have more links to other parts, but what I basically am trying to do is lay out what is required and why and how that should be taken into account as you prepare your model. So depending on if you're doing a conformity analysis, if you're trying to do then how will this affect your choice of modeling? So it's sort of a basic overview of why you have to do that. I talk a little bit here about criteria, pollutants versus greenhouse gas, and the legal framework that there is about the SIPs and how you have to use modeling to do your inventory, and then this is going to be something that you're then held to later on, so you better know what's going on when the inventory is. Right. I have a section about sketch modeling. I don't have examples of sketch models. I just have a link to the sketch model page, which I'm hoping will go on, although a lot of sketch models specific for air quality, or especially for greenhouse gas, may be different than just a simple sketch model that is going to be talked about. So that either maybe I could add something to the sketch model page later on about GHG sketch modeling, or the people who are working on that. So I talk about why you would need to use a full model, and how moves has made that even more important, that there's a lot of different inputs to moves. Then I jump into the Clean Air Act and conformity analysis and kind of explain the framework of how MPOs are required to demonstrate conformity whenever they update or amend their plan or their program, or there's a project that's being funded. So they'll have to do under NEPA, they'll have to do some sort of an analysis. I'm still having trouble making my formats work. I tried to, during the lecture on integrated models, I saw that you guys had a nice table, so I tried to put something into a table, but I can't figure out how to get it the rows instead of the columns. But the idea that you're going to have the different control measures that you're going to have to be able to model, and so that's going to affect the type of modeling that you have, although you could also sketch model those. There are other ways to do it. I talk about the conformity demonstration itself, and I talk about the latest planning assumptions. I probably should expand that a little bit more, but to me that's one of the most important aspects of your model under conformity, that you're not just putting garbage in. And when I say garbage, I mean not necessarily erroneous stuff, but biased stuff that you might want to think something's going to happen. Your population is going to change, or your speeds are going to change because of something. And so you need to be able to do that. So a little bit discussion, this sort of a policy level thing, but how your inputs are important and how there are some rules and guidance about what you're supposed to do, which a lot of people wonder about. I have my whole section on greenhouse gas, which was there before. Haven't changed that too much, and I haven't finished that one. And then finally, another section which has not been finished about actual inputs for moves and so on, and or if you're using MFAC, or if you're out of the country and you still have a mobile series model, exactly how to do that. So I've talked, like you can see a little bit about some of the inputs that moves is going to ask for now, and how that might explain what or inform how your model works. A little bit about centroid connectors. If you're collapsing a lot of local streets into centroid connectors, sometimes you have to correct that data when you put that in for a conformity analysis. And I just have 3 simple links right now to different model pages. There's so many resources out there talking about how to do air quality. I don't claim to be an expert on all of the federal regulations about air quality modeling. And so hopefully if someone sees something that's wrong that I said, they'll fix it. Otherwise, I'm going to just basically tell people this is how air quality modeling and greenhouse gas modeling link up to travel demand. And if you're concerned or you have to do this in an official capacity, you might want to look at all of these different links. So probably I should increase those links or organize those a little bit better. But like I say, FHWA and EPA have extensive web pages about how to do it, which the novice will get very confused about. Anyway, so that's what I've done so far. And I certainly would appreciate if anybody out there knows or has experience, especially in some of the conformity stuff, that they would help on this page. So thanks.
Great. That's great. You have done a lot of work. And just a footnote, but I think that sketch planning models page is something that we pulled from the old site just as sort of a placeholder for content. So I would feel,
Yeah,
I mean, you could definitely edit that. You know, I would go ahead and do whatever you want to that page. And I think my only comment overall would be to consider the notion of this informal 3-scroll rule that Dave Schmidt started for us, but maybe consider breaking some of this off, you know, into other pages. And I meant to mention that to you too, Eric Pihl, but I forgot to. So that otherwise, I think you did a great job. And I think you're right that there's a lot of regulation that goes along with this topic. So, you know, we can only sort of do so much here to help people wade through it. But I think you've gotten a good start for us. So that's great.
Thanks.
And as far as the table thing goes, sometimes if you just go into this page that you see what you like and you click edit, you can see how they set up all the right characters in wiki language to make it turn out that way, and kind of copy and paste and steal it that way. I don't know if that's what you tried.
Yeah, I tried to steal it while
Okay.
Peter was talking, but I couldn't. He had more columns anyway. I'll learn it. Are there other? I guess somewhere online there must be more extensive help on that than we have here. If you click the help thing, because that's not a lot.
The help button actually will take you to the Media Wiki help site eventually. I mean, it's down sort of on that page, and that's where.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, that's where more than you would ever want to know exists there.
All right, I have to do some research on that.
Yeah. Other comments or questions for Chuck?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a huge comment, but I think in general what we recommend is that people do a quick search before making a resource page or a sub page. There's some very, very short things right now that link to Clean Air Act. So that would be an obvious choice to, you've already got some places, just link to that page. We'll be filling in a little bit more, just so we don't have 3 or 4 pages all pointing the same place.
So who's already linking to that?
So
like
if you go through, so if you actually just go,
I think,
yeah. So yeah, if you go to all the topics, then no, not this one. There's one that's like everything we've already done. Established topics, I guess. Yeah.
Nope, not it. I thought it was
No.
incubator topics, maybe.
Yeah.
That one. Okay, I see. Yeah, this has all. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, there is a page anyway. It's through urban and metropolitan models and legislation. But
okay, I'll take
it. Yeah.
I did link, I think, to regulatory framework.
Oh, okay.
Somewhere.
Clearly, we didn't exhaust what we could say about it, but in general, I like that. First you see if anyone started something, and then you add to it instead of having 5 pages where we're all doing the same thing a little bit differently.
Yeah, I did find that one, and I stuck it in there.
Oh, I see. Great. Okay, that's all.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you. Great job, everybody. That's all of our presentations for today, unless somebody's just dying to show us something. I hope that most of you will be able to join us in January at the TRB meeting on Monday. We'll send out, you've already can see just through the regular registration the timing of that, but it's Monday afternoon. I think we've already let you know that part. We're working on an agenda, we being Ram and Rick, of course, and then Kim and I, and we'll hopefully get that to you before the meeting. And as always, if you're working on something and you get into a situation where it's getting messier rather than neater and you need some help, please let me know, because I'm here and happy to help you as best I can. And if I can't, we'll get our folks at Payne Consulting to help us as well. If there's no more comments, I will stop the recording and we'll post this to the website as the others have been. And again, thank you so much for your time, everyone, and happy holidays.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.